English second year. First of all, I would like to welcome our chief guest and speaker, Dr. Shrikant Puri sir, uh, Assistant Professor of Lokmanya Mahavidyalay, Varora, respected uh, Head of Department, Dr. Vivek Joshi sir of PGTD English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli, Assistant Professor Dr. Shilpa Athawale ma'am, Assistant Professor Dr. Vibhav Masrani and Assistant Professor Dr. Pramod Javri sir, and all my dear friends and all the participants of today's session. I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to everyone present here and all of you, those who are just joining us, welcome. This is the first online lecture of No S Series 3.0 organized by Postgraduation Teaching Department of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli, held between 11th April to 24th April 2023 on the online platform Microsoft Teams. Well, journey of this series, No Age, first edition has started in 2021, and now we have reached to the third edition of this series, where we have invited various different speakers with their different new ideas, new innovative initiatives, and new trends in language and literature that they share with us, with the students and participants, and enlighten the students. And for the further introduction, for the brief introduction and inauguration of this session, I would like to call Dr. Vivek Joshi, sir. Over to you, sir. Joshi, sir. Over
Am
to
I
you.
audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Good morning and welcome to the speaker, the friends participating in this series, No Age. And as Sapna has already shared with you, this is third edition of our online lecture series, which is titled as No Age, combination of two words, no and age. Dear friends, as it is said that learning never stops. And it continues even as a learner, as a students, as a teacher, and as a stakeholders of this particular mega platform. And the inspiration, major inspiration was the COVID situation, pandemic situation, where our physical classrooms were halted and intermittently, and we had no clue as to when we will return to the normalcy. The normalcy, the pandemic, the lockdown, these were the indispensable part of our learning maybe arena. And we were clueless as to when we will come back to our physical classrooms. But learning should never be stopped. So, inspiring by this phrase, we started looking for the alternatives. And in the search of such alternatives, we got motivated by various our like-minded colleagues who were trying various experiments at their own levels. So, this particular thing we cannot claim as a novel experiment in that way, but certainly it is adapted kind of model to reach to the learning community. And being the center of learning, it is mandate of postgraduate teaching department of English to extend our learning, extend our resources with the wider community, the present at different places. And due to this JIL, as a result of this JIL, the introduction of Noise series was done in 2021 as Sapna has suggested. And first year, more than 20 lectures were organized because at that time the situation was different. All were maybe working from home. There were classes were mostly online. So it was possible for the students and stakeholders like the presenters and the teachers to spare some time for this online activity. But then next year, the regular classes and regular activities started, and that left us very limited scope to continue this series for such a long as 25 lectures in a video. So we have curtailed this short to 10 lectures per series. And last year we had 10 different very fantastic speakers with their innovative topics to discuss with the learning community. And I'm equally happy to have another set of 10 teachers who are contributing and who will be with us for 1 hour daily with their own topics as Dr. Puri and so many others. These are our colleagues and fraternity, and I'm thankful to them for sparing their valuable time with us. And I'm sure the deliberations during this particular 1 hour for 10 days will lead them to another kind of set of new explorations and all, because our learning is contagious in that way. It affects the stakeholders. So it will affect the teachers, it will affect the learners, it will affect the students, and I'm sure these students will convert themselves into alumni in future. So naturally they will be part of the larger community, and this way we hope to extend our learning with wider and wider community further. With this note, I welcome the speaker, the participants, and all those who have contributed to this particular series. And with this, I thank all those who are contributing once again. I welcome the speaker, and Sapna, over to you now.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next, let me introduce our today's speaker, Dr. Shrikant Puri, sir, Assistant Professor of Lokmanya Mahavidyalaya, Baroda, and he is with us today with his topic, Poet and Poetry of the World War in English Literature. And let me introduce him first. He has been he has been assistant professor for 10 years and published 6 international journals, have organized um, 2 state, 3 national seminars, also attended 8 state and 25 national conferences, workshops and seminars. He has been worked on various authorities and bodies of universities such as Syllabus Subcommittee of PG English, UG and PG Q Paper Moderation Committee, UG and PG Answer Sheet Valuations, UG and PG Q Paper Settings, and also he has been participated in co-curriculars and extracurricular activities. And today he will share his topic, mm, Poets and Poetry of the World War in English Literature, with all of the students and the participant of this online session. And with further ado, uh, I hand over this session to Puri sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Good morning. I would like to first of all thank the director of PGDT, dear Dr. Joshi sir, Dr. Zavre sir, assistant professor, assistant professor Dr. Athole madam, and Dr. Meshram sir, to give me this opportunity to be online before students and my colleagues also. Uh, Before I start, let me share my screen. Okay, wait a minute. Hope my PPT is visible on your screen. So today I'm going to talk on poets and poetry of the world wars in English literature. We all know that this first world war fought between 1914 and 1918, and we'll talk about the poets who wrote poetry during this period. England was the one of those countries who came or entered in this war from the beginning, that is from 1914. And when this war came to England, this inspired poets, and out of this inspiration they started writing poetry regarding war. We can find feelings of patriotism, nationalism, and heroism in their poetry, but okay, at the beginning, and idealistic or romantic view of war, it was in their poetry. But very soon, this view was changed because of the real and sad experiences in war. Because more than 4 lakh English young soldiers died in a single battle, that is the Battle of Somme, and lakhs of people were killed all over Europe. And that was not the picture with only English soldiers, it was all over the Europe. Dream of England means earlier it was thought that England, if there is a heaven, then that must be like an England. And this dream or this image of England as a paradise was shattered because of this First World War. So the poets of the First World War, they wrote in favor as well as against the war. We can have this picture of Battle of Somme, which was fought in 1916, where more than 4 lakh English soldiers died. And this battle fought, um, I think, over 7 or 6 months. Features of this poetry: we know that these people were not artists, and they did not have any group, or they, did not have any set of ideas to write about. They were common soldiers who expressed their views, their feelings through poetry, and therefore the language that they used for poetry, that was colloquial. It means the language that we use in day-to-day life. The second feature we can describe as they used less rules, and they used less meter or less traditions of poetry writing, because they were not a trained poet, or they were not professional poets. Okay, they were simple soldiers, and therefore they did not use they did not follow strict rules or strict meter or traditions of poetry. Another feature we can say that we can find heroism, patriotism, or nationalism in their writing or in their poetry. Next, at the same time, we can find the description of horror of war. We can find the psychological trauma or cell shock neurosis in their poetry. I hope you have heard this word cell shock. And if you did not heard, then I have one image to clarify the meaning of that abstract word called cell shock. Okay, you can see that image. When a person gets trauma, especially emotional or psychological, that person becomes mentally, um, what you can say, abnormal. Okay, and the rest life becomes abnormal. We can call him a kind of mad person. Okay, he is not totally mad, but he behaves something like lunatic. So that's kind of experiences this soldier faced in war, and therefore they also expressed those feelings in their war, in their poetry also. We can find also individuality in subject and style, as I have already earlier said, that these poets were not associated with a particular group of thoughts or particular association. So we can find variety in their writing, and definitely this variety represents their individuality, and this we can find both in their subject and in their style also. We can also find the writing of poetry against the hypocrisy of warmongers. Warmongers means those who sit in AC cabins and arrange wars with other nations. Okay, so though they advertise war is very good and we must fight or we must sacrifice ourselves for our nations, etc., but they never enter in war, or they never took weapons in their hand and went on border to fight with enemies. They only encourage other soldiers and ask them to fight, and they don't have anything with the loss of life of soldiers. Okay, so they also wrote against this kind of hypocrisy of the warmongers, and that is also one of the features of this poetry. Again, these poets also wrote about the problems of soldiers and ex-servicemen. Okay, the soldiers who are in duty, who are in service, what kind of problems they are facing, and at the same time, the soldiers who are retired from that service and what they are doing now in society, how their life is disturbed if they are injured, if one of their limbs or more of them limbs are cut off or injured in army, and they are in that fighting, and that limb become in non-functional, then that kind of problems are also expressed in their poetry. Now, first of all, we will see the poets who wrote in favor of war. Okay, there are many more, but I have chosen only three of them. The most famous poet who wrote in favor of war is Rupert Brooke. Another is Greggs, and another is Nicole. Definitely, they were earlier soldiers, or they wrote at the beginning of the World War First, and therefore they wrote in favor of war. Patriotism, heroism, or nationalism we can find in their poetry. Then they praised the war traditionally. If we have seen the tradition of writing war poets, then we may need to go back to BC, or even before the time of our Mahabharata and Ramayana. Okay, from that time, the war is being praised. Okay, and the importance of war is being told through poetry. And therefore, these earlier poets praised war traditionally. They also wished to die for their nation and they wanted to be martyr. Martyr means shahid. त्यांना पण शहीद म्हणून ओळखल्या जावं असं त्यांना वाटत होतं. They want to die for their nation and uh, to do something for their nation in form of sacrificing their life. They faced horrible experiences in war. Okay, it was not like that they never come across such kind of horrible experiences in their life or in their war, but still they wrote or they celebrated war, they praised the war in their poetry. Okay, the first poet, that is Rupert Brooke, who was born in 1887 and died in 1915, just within a 1 year of starting this World War First, and he was died in war, that is in action, fighting with his enemies. He wrote many sonnets, especially, and all of them are or war. One of his most famous sonnet or the masterpiece of war poetry is The Soldier, which he wrote in 1940. And here he expresses or he shows his dedication towards his motherland, that is England. And he at the beginning of that sonnet he writes that if he dies abroad, then he will be buried there in that foreign country, and there, that place where he is buried, that place will become the place of England forever. And he wished to be martyr, and his wish was completed in the next year. Okay, that is in 1915 he became martyr. And at the end of his poem he considers England as a heaven. Okay, if there is heaven, then that must be England, and there is no other heaven other than England. This is the sonnet. This is a Petrarchan sonnet, which you can divide in octagon sestet. At the beginning, the lines which I have made red, that shows that if he dies in foreign land and he will be buried there, and that corner, that special part of that foreign country where his tomb or his grave will be, and there will be one stone showing his name and the nationality of that dead soldier. Okay, and that nationality or that part will remain forever of England, because that grave, that place where is that grave, will be useless for other work. And the last line of this sonnet shows that he is, or his country, that is England, is heaven. Now we will see the poets who had written against that war. Major poets of those writing against war were uh, Siegfried Sassoon, Isaac Rosenberg, and Wilfred Owen. Definitely they were the late soldier poets who wrote against war, or who were the first World War poets, but who started writing poetry after some months or after some years, and when after they have seen the horrible experiences or horrible incidents of that war. They faced traumatic or shell-shocking experiences in war. I had shown one picture of shell-shocking soldier, and that kind of experiences they expressed in their writing. They wrote about the life in military camp, attacks, slaughters, or psychosis, or the soldiers of the problems of the soldiers of the ex-servicemen. The most famous poet, or perhaps the leading poet of this anti-war writing, is that Siegfried Sassoon, who did not killed in that, who did not die in that war, and he served as a soldier in there. His famous poem is Attack. Here he describes a tank attack on a trench, or on a camp, soldier camp. He says that when that tank comes and attacks on that camp, At that time, some soldiers run away from that place to save their life because they are not conscious or they are not ready to counter attack or to face that attack. So they run away from that camp to save their life. But many of those soldiers die on the spot. And at the end of that poem, this Siegfried Sassoon, or the speaker of that poem, prays to Lord Jesus to stop this war at once. His another poem that shows anti-war feelings is The Deathbed. Here, he describes an injured soldier who is to die within a few moments or few hours. That soldier was given opium drugs to soothe his pain. That is a kind of painkiller, but that drugs also doesn't work for more time, and at the end that soldier dies. And here that one character is described called death, and this death says that I have chosen him and therefore he went. Okay, and I have chosen that soldier, and this death has not chosen only one soldier, he has chosen lakhs of or crores of soldiers, and all of them had to go from this earth. On the next soldier poet, perhaps the most famous in the whole history of anti-war poetry, is that Wilfred Owen, who born in 1893 and died in 1918. In a very short span of life, he has to bid adieu to our world. He was an officer in army, and he died in fighting war with enemies in 1918. He was the greatest and perhaps the most famous poet of the war poetry. The theme of his poetry is war and pity of war. He influenced many poets, succeeding poets like W.H. Auden or Stephen Stender and many more. His famous poem is A Strange Meeting. Perhaps most of you have read this poem, and it is prescribed in our syllabus of MA second year, sorry, MA first year. Here, two soldiers meet in an imagined hell, and the first soldier is killed by the next one, and because of that continuous fighting, the second soldier is dead, and both of them meet in an hell, and there these two persons meet, and that meeting is strange. It is a kind of satire on more warmongers. And if you see this poem, the first lines we can this shows that how these two soldiers died in war, and how they reached to an imagined hell. And the red line which I have made red, it is a kind of satire which makes us think whether we should continue war or whether we should try to settle our problems without fighting any war. Here, that dead soldier who is killed by other person, or the person who just entered hell, he speaks to that person, I am the enemy, you killed my friend. Yeah, here both the words are here, oxymoron. Enemy, he calls his new entered friend as enemy, and at the same time he calls him friend. It means that war is fought not because of the will of common people. It is only the will of those who are in power. They fought these wars just to keep their hold on their seat. They don't want to lose their power, and because of that, they arrange this kind of wars, and they spread a kind of nationalism among feeling of nationalism among the common people, and keep them away from real issues. And at the end, that two soldiers who are in fact enemies of each other, they say that let us sleep now. Okay, whatever happened, that happened. We cannot change now the situation which is going on earth. And here this poem ends. Another poem of him is Futility. Here, one soldier is perhaps already dead or unconscious, and other soldiers tries to revive him, tries to make him conscious, but all their efforts are futile. Futility means in vain. Okay, their efforts are in vain. They could not save the life of that injured soldier. Even they keep that. soldier in warm place. Okay, Europe is a cold region, and therefore they want warmth if they feel any problem, and that warm sunlight also becomes futile. That kind old sun is also helpless, and at the end of that poem, that soldier dies. His other poem is Insensibility. It expresses the sensibility of the war soldiers. This war affects the psychology of the soldiers and make them insensible. They only know to follow orders. They only know to uh, trigger the button of that weapon and kill whatever or whatsoever comes before them, and they become insensible towards what will happen the person if you killed who is before you, what will happen with the family of that person. Okay, they become insensible for that. So that soldier loses their ability to feel. Next poet is who wrote against war is Isaac Rosenberg, who also died in war in action. He is Anglo-Jewish, and he died in 1918. His famous poem is Break of Day in the Trenches. Trench means camp, nothing else. And what happens there? One morning, this poet or speaker watches a rat who crosses the boundary of their region and goes in enemy's region and again comes back. Here, ironically, Rosenberg says that rat is a brave animal who can crosses the boundary and goes in enemy's camp or goes in enemy's region and also come back. But we soldiers or we human beings are coward. We don't have that daring to cross our boundary. And hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Okay, okay. So it is an ironical poem. So conclusion, Robert Brooks, Greggs, and Nichols. These are the poets who wrote in favor of war. And Siegfried Sassoon, Isaac Rosenberg, Wilfred Owen, they were anti-war poets or they wrote against war. These poets of First World War were away from the experiments of modernism. We know that uh, this period was the period of modernism, and many writers brought modernism or innovations in writing, but these poets were away from that. Then they gave more importance to the subject uh, than the form of or the structure of the poetry. For them, their feelings were important, not the structure, and they expressed their feelings, boredom, fear of dread, traumatic experiences in war about their feelings in their writing. Now, the poets of the World War II. We all know that this World War started in 1939 and it was over in 1945. And we can see the pictures that aeroplanes were used in this war. And the second picture you can see of hydrogen bomb blasted on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This World War stopped with America's dropping bombs on two major cities in Japan in 1945. Then almost all the nations were involved in this war. In First World War, there were very few nations involved, but in Second World War, almost all the nations in the world were involved, and therefore it was more destructive than the First World War. And it is the cruelest event recorded in the history. Crores of people died, and many more were affected by this war. The poets of the First World War had no an early experience of war destruction, so we can find many poets writing in favor of war or they praised war. But all the new poet soldiers who joined or who served in the World War II, they were highly educated. They studied the history of World War First. They have seen the destruction of World War First. They also witnessed the sufferings of families of the dead soldiers, the injured ex-servicemen. For them, war was is equal to waste of human life. or waste of resources. And they also were aware of the hypocrisy of the politicians who organize wars. So we can find no nationalism or heroism in their poetry. Among them, Sidney Keys is a major poet who died very early, even completing his 21st birthday. He died in war, and he was a major soldier poet of the World War II who wrote against war. He died in war in action with fighting or against fighting his enemies. He wrote against war. The central theme of his poetry is death, and his famous poem is War Poet. Here he writes about lunatic condition of a war-injured soldier. Okay, this is the poem, very short poem written in colloquial language without following rhyme, rhythm, or that traditional features of poetry. I have made some lines bold. Uh, in the first two bold lines, he describes that when I grow sick and mad, mock me not, nor me chain. It means that soldier, even if he survives from war, there are very less chances of his remaining a normal person because he have faced so many horrible experiences in war, and because of that, there are more chances of imbalancing his mental condition. And if he becomes mad, then he prays or he asks others not to mock on him, not to chain him if he becomes mad in that war. And at the last, he says that though my face is a burned book and a waste town. Okay, now war is over, so don't consider me as a burned book or a waste town. Okay, respect me, though I remain in a normal condition or I may not remain in a normal condition. Next poet is Alan Lewis. He also wrote against war, and he died just 1 year before the end of war. And he is famous poet. He was killed in war fighting against enemies. He worked in India and Burma. Therefore, he is important for us. He wrote about fear of death. He wrote about also boredom or isolation of a soldier, the feelings of a soldier in camp or in war. He also wrote about people he met with, and death acts like a living person in his poems. The Soldier and My Living Mr. Death are his famous poems where he expresses his fear of death or the fear of a soldier about death. Another famous poets are Kenneth Douglas, who also died in war fighting against enemies. He worked in North America. His famous poem is Time Eating. And here he says that a snake can get its skin back, a lizard can get its tail back, but a soldier can never get his youth or his boyhood back. Once you become a soldier, you cannot enjoy all the things which a normal youth can enjoy. And when he retires from his service, when he comes back from his service, at that time, even after surviving, even after um, saving his life from enemies, he comes back. At that time, he finds that his boyhood has gone, and now he has become a middle-aged man. Roy Fuller, who served in Navy, Zerel, Dickey, etc., are other war poets, and most of them have written against war. So the poetry of World War II was not so famous because these poets were not artistic poets or professional poets. They just expressed their feelings, and therefore, and we know that media, they generally don't follow common people. They follow the people who are in power, and therefore they did not give proper weightage to the feelings of these poets, especially who wrote against war, and therefore they did not become famous at that time, though we read them now. Most of the poems were about death, boredom, injuries, psychological trauma, a loss of lives, problems, and problems of ex-servicemen and other things. Unlike World War First, means in World War First we can find that uh, there were some poets who had written in favor of war, but in World War Second time there were very few poets, and they wrote also very few poems in favor of war or praising war. They aimed to be personal and not public. Okay, their aim was to express their personal feeling. They did not write about what public wants. Okay, now we find that the trend is the thing which is being sold in market, that is tried to be produced. Okay, even the movies, that movies are produced, which is the taste of most of the people. But these people, these poets especially, they did not have to do anything with public opinion, public taste. They wanted to just express their own feelings, what they have faced in war. With this, I would like to conclude myself. For these notes, I have used these two resources. That is the book by B. Prasad, Background to the Study of English Literature, and one online source. So, if you have any question, feel free to ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for this important lecture, sir. You have covered all the war poets, important poets such as Rupert Brooke, Wilfred Owen, Sidney Gibbs, etc. of 20th century, and with their significant poetry. Thank you so much, sir. For let's move to the next question answer section. If anyone have any queries, you can ask. You can unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can drop your question in the chat box. Anyone who have questions, you can ask the question. You can unmute yourself.
Sir, I have some questions.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, you can.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, my question is, what was the psychology of poets during the World War?
Yeah, I think I have explained your question in my presentation.
Yes, sir.
There were some poets who wrote about war traditionally. Okay, so their mentality was definitely in favor of war. They wanted war. They wanted to show heroism. They wanted to show that they have something that they can show in war only, that talent. Okay, elsewhere they will not get any chance to show that talent. So they were positive towards war. But there were other poets who wrote against war. Okay, they did not thought that only war is a medium where you can show your talent. Okay, and we all know that war doesn't help to become progressive or to help ourselves or to become better in our life. Okay, it always is destructive. Okay, whether it loses on our part, or whether it distracts on the opposite part. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so many poets they had the psychology of writing against that war.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manisha. Again, anyone, if you have questions.
Sir, what question?
Yeah.
Is there an effect of World War and literary composition on the public mind?
Yes, yes. We know that the modernism, though it started at the beginning of 19th century, but after this World War First, we can say that there is drastic changes in writing, or that experiments which were made before the war and after the war. We can see that after war, there come many experiments in writing. Especially, we can find the publication of Westland in 1922,
Yes, sir.
the publication of uh, that novel Ulysses. Okay, it also published in 1922. Okay, and many other experiments we can find in a drastic manner after the World War First.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, it changed the writing criteria or the writing styles of writers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Manish. Sir, there is again one question.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Sir, what is the main purpose of the poetry that has leaded and impacted in 2021st century of war poetry?
Main purpose.
Yes.
No, I don't think that a poetry should have any purpose. Uh, in this case only, I am on Walter Patter's side, that art for art's sake. Okay, we should write poetry just because we wanted to express our feelings, and we should not follow any ideology to, at least in poetry. Okay, if you wanted to write an essay, then you should follow an ideology and express your views. Okay, but as far as poetry is concerned, we should not go behind anyone, and we should express our own feelings, whether it is related to a special ideology or not. That doesn't matter.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, anyone, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself or you can ask in the chat box. I think sir have already cleared all your questions in its
Yeah, I expected one more
itself.
question.
Yes.
I had expected, but none of you have asked. What is the difference between war poets and trench poet? It is in your syllabus, MA first year. Okay, any poet who writes about war, that is war poet, and those who are actually participated in war, and on that basis they are writing uh, about war, then those poets are called trench poets. Okay, war poets means anybody. I can also become an war poet. Okay.
I think we have covered all the questions.
So,
Hmm.
hello.
Yes.
Yes.
So there is purpose of poetry. Then how can you say that there is not any purpose of poetry?
Where is purpose? Who said you? Who told you? If you are writing because of any purpose, or by keeping in mind that purpose, then you are professional or you are commercial. You are not writing, or you are not enjoy writing poetry. Okay, you are that kind of writer who wants to earn money through writing poetry. Okay, otherwise there is no purpose. And if there is any purpose, then just to express your feelings, that can be the only purpose.
So what is the difference between subjective and objective poetry?
Yeah, subjective means if you want to express your feelings only, and you have to nothing to do with the feelings of others. Okay, if I am writing what I feel or what I have experienced, that is subjective. And if I write that what others feel, or what anyone can feel in a special particular situation, and if I am writing imagining myself at the place of others, then that is objective poetry. You might have studied My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. That is a kind of objective poetry. The speaker is not Robert Browning himself. Okay, that is the Duke of Ferrara. Okay, the person who is not present there, that is objective poetry. And if you read the lyrical poems or the poems of Wordsworth, okay, they are subjective.
Again, anyone? Any questions? Any queries to you? I think we have covered all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for today's session and your today's lecture. And everyone for joining this session. Thank you very much and giving me opportunity for hosting today's session and bearing with me at the last. And for the next vote of thanks, I would like to call Manisha Hill.
Okay, before that, let me also thank all the organizing team, including the director, the colleagues, and all the present students. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now I will call Manisha Hill. Vote of thanks. Do you have any questions?
No.
Sapna,
Yes, sir.
kindly request everyone to switch on their camera. We want to have group photo.
Yes, I request everyone to switch on their cameras. We will have a group photo. I request all the 13 participants to turn on their cameras.
Please send us the screenshot. Huh?
Rama Pimpalkar, Tilesh Mohrle, Pramod Javre.
I think everyone's switching.
No. Tilesh Mohrle is not yet.
Tilesh.
Tilesh Mohrle. Till Patwal is here,
Tilesh,
yes. Oh, Javre sir has turned his maybe camera.
yes, yes.
Wait a minute, we are waiting for Dr. Pramod Javre and Tilesh Mohrle to switch on their cameras.
Yes.
Great. Tilesh, is there an issue from your side, Tilesh?
I think, sir. We have
Okay,
some
so
technical.
let us have a photo now. Which is one more time. Thank you.
Sir,
Over to you, Sapna.
Thank you. Yes, Manisha, you can continue.
Namaste, sir. Good afternoon to each one of you present here. I'm Manisha Hirko, MA second year, postgraduate teaching department of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli. I'm thankful today's session here for the event of Noise Series 3.0 session first. The purpose PGDD of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli for taking Noise series is that the student should excel in literature. He should become aware of literature and write something independently about literature. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to our chairpersons of the program, Dr. Joshi sir, organized a very beautiful and effective session for us. Last year also had such an excellent and beneficial webinar. Joshi sir always trying to increase our interest by organizing thankful session for us. Congratulations and thank you so much, sir. We warmly welcome him and express our gratitude, Dr. Shrikant Puri sir, Lokmanya Mahavidyalaya Barora, for giving us a very thoughtful and enlightening guidance on poets and poetry of the World War in English literature. Dr. Puri sir have very beautiful informations about the poets and their poetry during the World War period. The work of the poets, their poems and thought of the poets during the war period. He made the student aware of the situations of that time by telling them in this session. Congratulations and thank you very much, sir. I would like to our hearty thanks to Honorable Masram sir, Atwale ma'am, Javre sir, all our teachers, guides, Facility of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli. Similarly, thanks to our participants, students who have graced these sessions with enthusiasm. Thanks a lot for the number of students and their eagerness made this program very enjoyable and successful. Thank you very much all. Thank you, sir.